Have you ever wondered why you feel so tired after trying to please who barely notices your existence? How many times have you offered your best part to someone who didn't even care to keep your name fondly? It's like watering a dry soil with hope and watching it evaporate before it takes root. Deep down, you know, there's something wrong with giving so much to those who don't pay back. But it goes on, because a part of you still believes you'll be seen, recognized, loved. But what if the real problem was never the other? What if the mistake is where you put your attention, your energy, your essence? Stoicism teaches us that the greatest pain is not in the contempt of others, but in the expectation that we put in the wrong eyes. Expecting something from someone who has nothing to offer is like trying to light a candle in a storm. This video is an invitation to change this silent cycle of self-sabotage. To understand, once and for all, that caring for those who do not care about you is to waste their lives, a life that, however painful, is too brief to be begged. Here, we will go through together 7 Stoic lessons that not only free but awaken. Remember, what you tolerate defines what you live. Before we go, I want you to write in the comments the phrase, "Today, I choose to come back to me." This decision is a gesture of return, an anchor, because when you write it, you're not just declaring something to the world. You're telling yourself it's enough, that you're done chasing people who've already turned their backs, that your presence is worth more than any approval. Now get ready. The journey begins with one truth. You do not need to be accepted by those who do not know how to see you. Number 1, the key is inside you. Have you ever tried to see yourself through the reflection that the other offers you? It is as if, with every look that seeks approval, you deliver a small part of yourself. A compliment cheers you up, a criticism shakes you. You adapt, shape, squeeze to fit in the expectation of who may not even notice the effort. And at the end of the day, you feel that you have lost something, but you don't know what. This feeling of emptiness has a name: absence of itself. This is where the first lesson begins. Stoicism did not come to make you indifferent, but to return your autonomy. It whispers something you may have forgotten along the way. Your peace is not in the other, it is in you. Epictetus, one of the greatest names of Stoic philosophy, was clear in saying that those who live by other people's opinions are slaves to them. Slave, yes, because it acts, feels, and thinks in function of the external gaze. And the worse it is that, the more it tries to please, the more it moves away from its essence. It is like screaming in an open field waiting for echo, and receiving only silence. The Stoic understands that the value of someone is not in the number of people who approve of him, but in the consistency with which he lives his principles. The key to freedom, therefore, is internal. She's in the courage to ask herself, if no one applauds me, will I still continue? If the answer is yes, then you are on the right path. This key, however, does not open with force. It rotates with daily choices, small and silent. It is in the no that you learn to say without guilt, in the pause that you offer yourself before reacting, in the care of choosing your own truth instead of pleasing for fear of rejection. Emotional slavery is born of fear, fear of being left, criticized, ignored. But look, those who live under the control of these fears will never be whole. It will always be a shadow, a malleable copy of someone's expectation. Retrieving from all this is like coming back from an inner exile, a slow but profound return, a reunion with that part of you that does not scream for attention, but whispers conviction. When you begin to inhabit this place, your center, the eyes of others lose the power to disassemble you. The key is inside you, and turning it does not require authorization. It requires courage. It requires, above all, detachment from the need to be everything for everyone, because it will always make you almost nothing to yourself. And make no mistake, at first taking this position will cost you. It will look like you are losing people, opportunities, affection. But in fact, you will be gaining something infinitely more valuable: integrity. The person you need to become already lives within you. It is only buried by the layers of pleasantness, fear, and convenience. Disentering it is an act of sacred rebellion. It is to refuse the normativity of emotional emptying. It is to return to belonging, not to the group, but to oneself. And then, perhaps for the first time, you will experience what is true freedom. Not caring about who doesn't care. Not for arrogance, but for lucidity. Finally, you will understand that the key was never about opening doors for others to enter, but about unlocking the prison you built yourself. And that's just the beginning. Number 2, the empty you try to fill not from others. There's a space inside you that nobody sees but insists on hurting. No matter how much you try to occupy it, with companionship successfully, with distractions, it manifests itself again on silent nights. At times when no one answers your messages, in the days when the world seems to turn, and you keep standing still. That void, you know well. You have tried to deny it, hide it, fill it with everything but what really matters: you. Stoicism, with its brutal clarity, does not try to cover this hole with sweet promises. It confronts you with a simple and difficult truth. What is missing is not the love of the other. It is its own belonging to its essence. You grew up believing that value comes from outside. That being desired is to be worthy. That being praised is to be sufficient. But that logic condemns you to an eternal emotional begging. Because the more you seek in the other what should come from within, the weaker you become. Like a traveler crossing deserts looking for an oasis when the true spring is under your own feet. That's why so many relationships wear you out, because so many friendships leave you alone. Because you're trying to take out emotional accounts from others, what you should have invested in you. And the balance, of course, is negative. Always. The pain of emptiness is not your fault. It is a call. An internal alarm saying, "Hey, come back. You have abandoned yourself." Seneca teaches us that the soul only finds fullness when it stops waiting for the world to complete it. And this is a decision that needs to be made in silence, without applause, without audience. It is when you look inside, and instead of demanding more love, more presence, more attention from others, decides to offer what you are seeking: time, affection, respect. This may seem lonely, and it will be, in the beginning. But in time, you realize something miraculous. True connections only flourish when they are not nourished by need. Love is only light when it is not supporting the lack of someone you do not love. Presence is only pleasurable when you're not trying to prove that you deserve to be there. You no longer need to beg for crumbs when you learn to serve wholesome banquets. You no longer need to get lost in the eyes of the other when you finally recognize yourself in the mirror itself. Filling this void is not an easy task. It will hurt. It will require detachment, not from people, but the idea that you need it to exist. It will lead you to view your loneliness as a master, not as a sentence. It will teach you the difference between being alone and being at peace. And you know what's more curious? When you stop waiting for someone to come and complete you, the void doesn't disappear. It turns. It stops being a hungry hole and becomes fertile space. There, you start planting new versions of yourself. No rush, no despair. With truth, you are not half anyone. It has never been. The emptiness you feel will not be filled by a message, a touch, a validation. It closes, little by little, every time you choose, listen, sustains. And one day, without realizing it, you'll sit with yourself and feel something rare, quiet. Because the prettiest isn't when someone comes in and fills in what's missing. That's when you find out it's already overflowing. Number 3. Silence to return to center. The world screams and you answer. It's notification, demand, opinion. It's people saying what you should do, feel, want. It's voice that comes from all sides, except from inside. Because inside, almost always there's just echo. A weak echo, muffled by the noise of everything you accept without question. And the scariest thing is that it seems normal. You get up already being pulled by stimuli. You run all day trying to align yourself to expectations, to the clock, to comparison. When you finally lie down, the mind remains active, reproducing the unsaid dialogues, the unspoken fears, the unspoken desires. And then comes the void, and you fill it with more noise, series, networks, empty conversations, as if the silence was an enemy to be defeated and not the home you abandoned. Marco Aurelius knew, in silence, there are no masks, only true. And perhaps that's why so many fear him. Silence confronts you with what you have avoided, the unhealed pain, the dreams you've put up, the decisions you're postponing. He reveals where you are, without filters of the ego, without emotional makeup. But here is the paradox. That is precisely why it heals. When you learn to silence, not just the external sound, but the internal noise, something starts to reorganize. It's as if the shards could finally settle down. Emotions slow down. Thoughts line up. Certainties gain room to breathe. And in the center of it all, you reappear. To silence is not to isolate yourself from the world. It is to reconnect with what matters. It is to pause chaos to hear what is whispering inside. Your needs, your values, your truth. In Stoicism, this practice is a return, a realignment, a rescue. When you silence, you begin to realize how many decisions you made by impulse, how many words were spoken by need, how many relationships there were by habit, and not by truth, how many times you were present in the body, but absent in the soul. And gradually, silence becomes a choice. You begin to go out less to impress, talk less to defend yourself, post less to assert yourself, and discover that the peace you sought so much was already available, only hidden under layers of need for approval. This return to the center transforms everything. You begin to discern what is essential, not with anger, but with serenity. You begin to say no without guilt, being alone without loneliness, slowing down without feeling unproductive, because you finally understand that living is not about responding, but about belonging. And the first place you need to belong is to yourself. Silence is also choosing which battles are worth it. How many times have you responded to provocations for fear of looking weak? How many times have you entered debates that have only driven you away from your axis? Silence here is not cowardice. It is strategy. It is maturity. It is self-control. The Stoic does not omit itself by passivity, but by wisdom. He understands that not everything needs to be said, that not every clash is noble, that not every truth needs to be shouted out. Sometimes the most powerful gesture is just to silence and remain whole. Returning to the center requires silence because it is there, and only there, that you can hear yourself clearly, that you can distinguish the voice of the soul from the noise of the ego, that you remember what really moves you, away from the borrowed desires that the world has tried to sell you. Then silence, not like the one who hides, but like the one who finds himself. And when you're ready to speak again, talk like you're back from a sacred place, because that's what the center is, a temple, and you're the priest of your own conscience. Number 4, not everyone deserves his access. Have you ever stopped to think about who's taking up too much space inside you? They are not always declared enemies. Sometimes they call you a friend, but they empty you. They are those who say they love you, but only appear when they need you. They are voices that surround you, touch your life, but do not know your soul. And yet you keep them around, as if having them was better than dealing with the silence that would come in the absence of them. But here's a truth that Stoicism doesn't mask. Not everyone deserves to cross you. You are sacred ground, and what comes into contact with the sacred must be chosen with intent. Every person you allow to approach has the power to touch your emotional field, to interfere with your thoughts, to shape your inner state. And when you allow this without discretion, you give up your greatest heritage, your balance. How many times have you let yourself be consumed by a conversation that drained you, by a meeting that seemed light, but that made you heavier than you arrived, by an unanswered message that turned into pain, by a silence of the other that you turned into your fault? This happens when you forget that access to your presence is a privilege, not a right. Musonio Rufo, a Stoic master, understood that the environment that surrounds us shapes our character directly. He spoke not only of places, but of people, because it is not only what we do that we form, it is with who we do, with whom we choose to share what we have of the most intimate, our time, our energy, our listening. The Stoic is not cold. He is selective. He understands that offering everything of himself to everyone is the quickest route to exhaustion. What generosity without discernment becomes self-abandonment. What boundless compassion becomes emotional servitude. You need, urgently, to learn to close doors. Not in anger, but clearly. Closing a door does not mean excluding someone from your life. It means protecting what is most precious within it. It means drawing invisible limits that say, not here. This is my space. Here comes only those who respect me, who build me, who can hear my silence and not just invade my noise. And it takes courage to do that, because some will not accept the new version of you that respects yourself. They will call you selfish, far away. They will say that you have changed. And all of this will be true, because you will have changed. You will have stopped begging for emotional crumbs. You will have stopped accepting warm presences. You will have started to select who deserves to see you vulnerable, who can walk by your side without stealing your floor. From today, watch carefully who you allow to enter. And more so, what each entrance has left. There are people who arrive and leave flowers. Others, storms. Some remind you of who you are. Others make you forget. And most importantly, it is not your duty to welcome everyone. You are not shelter for other people's needs. You are not the emergency room for pain that does not belong to you. You are home, and home needs keys, not open doors all the time. Who approaches you should ask, do I deserve to be here? And you too, does this presence honor or steal what I am? Being selective is not pride. It's care, it's self-awareness, it's self-love in its most mature form. And remember, it's not everyone who hurts you that it's bad. Sometimes it's just someone lost, someone unconscious. But still, it's not your job to save him. It's your job to preserve yourself. Dignity lives where you decide who comes in, and especially who no longer enters. Number 5, the tiredness you feel is not physical. There's a kind of tiredness that doesn't heal with a good night's sleep. You can sleep 8 hours, drink reinforced coffee, take a deep breath before you go out to work, and yet, at the end of the day, feel like you've been hit by something invisible. It's a wear-out that has no obvious physical explanation, but that accumulates, repeats, and eventually normalizes. People tell you that it's just stress, that it's just running. You yourself try to believe that, but something inside you knows it's not just that. This tiredness is not born of the body, but of the soul. It settles slowly, as an inconvenient visitor who decides to stay. It arises from the words that you shut up, from the truths that you swallow, from the routines that you repeat without questioning. It feeds on the relationships that you sustain by fear, from the environments that you endure by habit, from the obligations that you fulfill so as not to disappoint anyone, except yourself. The tiredness that you feel is emotional, existential, spiritual, and ignoring it only increases your strength. Plotino's philosophy, a thinker who saw the soul as the center of existence, invites us to look at this exhaustion as a sign of distance from our true self. When the soul is constantly exposed to what denies its nature, to haste, to superficiality, to comparison, to lack of meaning, it begins to wither, and the body feels. The body is the messenger, not the problem. He's only revealing what consciousness refuses to face. How many times have you seen yourself saying it's all right when you weren't? How many times have you continued in commitments that didn't nourish you, smiling on the outside and screaming on the inside? How many times have you ignored that subtle nuisance, that intuition that said it's not for me? The result of this is a breakdown that goes beyond the physical. It's the weight of life disconnected from what really matters. This is the kind of tiredness that is not solved with rest, but with reconnection. You need to stop, not to sleep, but to listen. Listen to your breath, your feelings, your dissatisfactions. Silence the world for a few moments to listen to yourself. And that takes courage, because sometimes the truth that emerges from silence is uncomfortable, but it is also liberating. Stoicism reminds us that living in line with nature, with our essence, is the way to serenity. That means that it is not enough to work. It is necessary to feel that there is purpose in what one lives, that your routine reflects your values, that your decisions are not being dictated by fear or custom, but by conscience. If there is a constant exhaustion, it is a sign that something is out of place. And you do not need to follow like this. Perhaps it is time to ask, what in my life has required more than you can give me? What have I fed that does not give me peace? Where am I forcing myself to fit in? From whom have I accepted less than I deserve? You are not meant to live exhausted. Life should not be a constant burden. The soul, when cared for, blooms. And this flowering manifests itself in the body, in the choices, in the way you go through the days. But for that to happen, you have to stop ignoring the signs. You have to honor your tiredness, not as weakness, but as a compass. To honor tiredness is to allow yourself to change routes, relationships, routines. It is to accept that something needs to end so that something else can begin. And above all, it is to understand that you are not wrong to feel that way. You are just feeling the impact of living a long time away from yourself. Number 6, shame is not yours, it's others. Shame is one of the most silent and corrosive emotions you can carry. It does not invade you with force. It infiltrates you. You begin to doubt yourself in little detail. It avoids exposing yourself, retreats in conversations, hesitates before sharing something intimate. Gradually, it becomes an expert in disguise what you feel, in hiding what you are, in adapting to what the environment requires. And all this because, at some point, you were convinced that being you was not enough. That conviction wasn't born with you. It may have been a criticism at the wrong time, a rejection that caught you off guard, a look of disdain just when you needed a welcome. And from there, without realizing it, you started to internalize the idea that there's something wrong with being like it is, which started as a wound turned into an identity, and then shame stopped being a passing feeling. Aeneas of Gaza, a philosopher of the 6th century, said with precision that it is not the facts that hurt us, but the way we interpret them. And the shame is this, a distorted interpretation of the very essence, influenced by judgments that were never yours. You were not born ashamed. You learned to be ashamed because you absorbed the opinion of others as absolute truth. But here is the key to liberation. What others project on you says more about them than about you. The shame you carry is often the reflection of the discomfort of others before their authenticity. When someone tries to diminish you by being sensitive, intense, dreamy, or different, what you are really doing is confessing the very limitation in dealing with human complexity. And yet you carry this shame as if it were your own. How many times have you shut up so you don't look like a fool? How many times have you dressed up with emotional neutrality not to bother? How many times have you hidden your opinions, your tastes, your beliefs, just to keep yourself included in environments that didn't deserve your presence? This constant adaptation is a costly strain, because shame not only limits you, it sabotages you. It prevents you from risking. showing yourself, allowing yourself. It whispers that you will be rejected if you are honest, that you will be ridiculed if you are vulnerable, that you will be excluded if you are true, and that fear, nourished in silence, makes you build walls around you. But living with shame is living under the realm of narratives that are not yours. It is like walking with my feet tied to invisible chains that you can break if you decide to ask, where does this feeling come from? Who made me believe that I needed to hide? The Stoic does not run away from these questions. He faces them, because he knows that there is no emotional freedom without a deep review of the origins of pain. And often, that pain is born in the other that did not see you, in the other that did not know how to love you, in the other that limited, hurt you. But it is not about him anymore. It is about you. It is you who can now refuse that legacy, who can return that guilt, that shame, that burden, who can say, this does not belong to me. And in doing so, you are not denying what you have lived. You are affirming who you are now. Someone who no longer needs to hide to be accepted. Accepting oneself here is a philosophical act, breaking with the logic that we need to be validated to be validated. Remembering that shame only finds shelter where doubt settles. And when you start trusting yourself, it has nowhere else to live. It's not your shame. It was left in you by someone who didn't know how to stay. Number 7. The desire to be loved can slave you. Few things are as natural as the desire to be loved. From the first cry, the human being seeks eyes that embrace him, arms that surround him, words that confirm him. This yearning for affection in the form moves us and often strengthens us. But there is a point where he ceases to be the food of the soul and becomes prison, when the love we seek begins to determine who we are. Have you ever shaped your behavior to please someone? Have you ever recalculated your words to be accepted into a group? Have you already annulled yourself into a relationship so as not to lose the presence of the other? This is the beginning of a subtle but profound process, the abandonment of yourself in the name of acceptance. And the more you disfigure yourself to be loved, the further away from your essence. Until one day, even surrounded by people, you no longer recognize yourself. Schopenhauer, with his raw vision of existence, asserted that much of our suffering comes from the expectation not only of being loved, but of being loved in the exact way we desire. This makes us dependent, vulnerable to the oscillation of the other. And thus, the legitimate desire turns into obsession, and the search for love becomes submission. Each gesture is an attempt to keep the other close. Every silence of yours is to avoid conflict. Every concession, a hope of permanence. But what remains in this process is not love. It is a theater. And the more the spectacle pleases you, the more you fear the end of the play. The fear of not being loved makes you accept emotional crumbs, delayed promises, constant absences, all in the name of a bond that, in practice, has already hurt you. Stoicism does not condemn love, but it warns, anything that you need to not endure losing it, it possesses you. And the love that possesses you, it enslaves you. Emotional freedom begins when you want to be loved, but does not depend on it to exist. When you appreciate the presence of the other, but does not fall apart with absence. When you offer affection, but do not submit in exchange for permanence. This freedom requires self-knowledge. It is necessary to know who you are when you are not trying to please. To know what you value, what you tolerate, what you do not accept anymore. And that is painful, because in the process, some relationships will prove unbalanced. You will realize that some people only stayed because you shrunk. That some affections only existed while you gave up on yourself. And here comes grief. Not for losing them, but for finally finding yourself. To let go of the need to be loved is not to give up love. It is to purify it. It is to want to love freely, without invisible contracts, without silent exchanges, without the constant vigilance of, will I be pleasing? Real love only blooms where there is room for authenticity. And this only happens when you allow yourself to be whole, even if it scares you, even if it does. You are worthy of love just as you are. But you must believe that before you expect someone to confirm what you accept in the name of affection teaches others how to treat you. And what you tolerate to be loved reveals how much you still have to love yourself. When the desire to be loved is less than the desire to be true, then finally, you will be free. I sincerely hope that this message has been helpful. I sincerely want to congratulate you for coming this far and completing the video. That means that you want to improve as a person. If you liked the video, leave your comment. If you don't know what to say, comment gratitude. Then I'll know that you've watched until the end. If you're not already on the channel, what are you waiting for? Sign up now and join us. Stoicism is full of teachings like this, which are applicable to our everyday life. Therefore, I encourage you to continue learning about this philosophy. I leave here 2 videos full of Stoic wisdom, so you can continue learning. Until next